So I think we are good to go. Oh. Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone, and a huge welcome to the 48th Annual General Meeting of Involve Kent. We're delighted to be joined here today by many of you in the room. For those of you online, there's quite a packed auditorium here today. Staff, service users, trustees and our volunteers who are joining us both virtually and in person. By way of introduction, I'm Richard Lester. I have the absolute privilege of being the chair of the Board of Trustees. And I would like to thank you all for taking the time today to attend and be with us either in person or online. So today is an opportunity for us to reflect on a year of significant achievements of Involve. And I hope you'll see and agree with me at the end of the session, celebrate the huge difference that have been made by so many individuals through a huge amount of dedication, whether that be those that work for Involve, those that we partner with, some of whom are speaking today, but equally those who volunteer their time, particularly the brilliant volunteers across the organisation and, of course, our trustees who lead forward the organisation in the way that you will see over the next hour or so. I've got a few housekeeping rules I have to tell you, which I've now got to remember, which is quite difficult for me to do. The first one is there are no fire alarms planned today, so if for any reason the fire alarm does sound, there are exits to the side of the room and to the rear of the auditorium. Please follow a member of staff if we need to evacuate the building. If you are speaking today, so you're presenting, I'm told you have to stand right where I'm standing. You can move your head left and right, but don't move too far from the microphone because that is broadcasting to our guests who are joining us online today. If in doubt, there's somebody at the back that will shout what you need to do. So if you get a heckle down, it's to tell you what you need to do. So today's a really important day for us. And on behalf of the entire Board of Trustees, I want to start by saying a huge thank you to everyone that makes Involve possible. We're going to reflect on the successes today, hear some of the brilliant work that's undertaken, but equally think about what the future means for us, for Involve, and for all of those that depend heavily on the brilliant services that are provided. This is my first year as chair of the board. Having been on the board for 13 years, I had the privilege last year of being elected, and it's certainly been an interesting, challenging, but hugely rewarding year, and I'm sure you will agree with me as we move forward. We've had a number of changes, so we saw Charlotte Osborne-Ford, our chief executive, for a number of years before leaving us in the period that we're reporting today, and our former chair, Stephen O'Connell, who retired after a long-standing period in the position of chair, and for which we pass on our huge gratitude for their work and dedication. We've also seen this year the arrival of our new Chief Executive Officer, Andrea Wiggins, who will be speaking later today and talking a bit about the future. And I pass on my thanks to those who in the interim period stepped up to undertake leadership roles to ensure that Involve continued to be effective and brilliant in the way that's described. So we today are really proud of the launch of our 2022-23 brochure. They get better and better every year, so thank you, team, for putting that together and the time and effort that goes into our annual report, which we will formally adopt later on at the formal annual general meeting. But there are some significant areas identified in that report that show just the breadth and depth of work that Involve continue to undertake. And I pulled out a few areas that I thought I would just reflect on before we move into the formality of the day. So staggeringly, in the period of 22-23, Involve have supported nearly 25,000 people having a direct impact on their everyday lives. We've had contact with individuals, nearly 140,000 individual contacts with individuals across Kent who have contacted us either directly because they've needed help and support from Involve, our partners, or to be signposted to the right agency or charity to help them. Nearly 10,000 face-to-face visits have happened in the last year, which is a phenomenal achievement given the small size of the staff team and volunteer group. And we've run nearly 3,000 different activity groups over the year. And you'd think that that sounds an awful lot, but Involve continues to develop and grow, and we haven't seen that change any less in the last year. And we are committed to helping more and more people as we move forward. We're now one of the largest employers of social prescribers in the United Kingdom, having nearly 80 GP surgeries in Kent with social prescribers and link workers in the GP surgeries. And we've expanded that to cover secondary care settings as well, which is a huge achievement, just showing the hugely positive elements of involving the work that's undertaken. In the 22-23 period, we also saw the launch of Actively Involved in Dartford, Gravesham and Swanley, and this is a flagship programme which I'm sure those of you that are aware of the programme will agree is hugely impactful and makes such a huge difference to so many people's lives. So the innovation of Involve continues, and we as a Board of Trustees are hugely proud of the unwavering commitment to innovate, diversify and make sure that we help as many people as we possibly can, given the challenges that we all know of. Examples of that include the work with children and young people over the last year, supporting individuals with autism spectrum conditions, and also the introduction and support of personal health budgets across the county, and supporting nearly 5,500 carers across Kent, people that look after others and dedicate their time that need support from Involve. I'm sure you'll agree as you get a chance to look through the annual report, there's a huge amount of work that's undertaken and that makes such a significant difference. Now, as we move forward into the next year, the pressures that exist across the sector are not going to leave us untouched, and we anticipate some challenges that are ahead. But what I can tell you on behalf of the board and the whole organisation is that Involve is truly committed to continuing to help as many people as possible, to continue to innovate and diversify in the services that we offer, to make sure that we stand true to our values that we set out in our annual plan and that we've, as a board, discussed and re-agreed this year, which are to help and improve health, empowering communities to live well, and support tackling root cause of ill health across our communities. So we are completely committed to the work that has been ongoing and to the brilliant progress that's been made as a board. You have a fantastic group of staff, volunteers and partners that work tirelessly to promote the work of Involve and continue to expand. And the next year is incredibly positive in terms of our commitment to develop and innovate. So I welcome you very much to today's AGM. I hope that you find it useful to hear some of the brilliant work. I thank all of those people that have taken the time to present. I know it's not an easy task to do, particularly when you're in this beautiful venue and a huge theatre that we're in today, but truly inspiring work that's going to be presented over the next hour or so. I thank everyone for their contribution and hope you enjoy the next hour and a half. So thanks very much. I'm handing over now. Sorry, I should... Thank you. I didn't wait for the applause, but it's very nice. I'm going to hand over now to Andrea Wiggins, who is our Chief Executive Officer, to continue with the opening. Thank you.
I'm really pleased to be here at my first AGM as CEO of Involve. I can't see you at all, so I'm sorry about that. So when I first started as my role as CEO in Involve in August last year, I was impressed by the variety and quality of the work that the organisation delivers. As I spent time with people, clients, volunteers and employees, one standout characteristic caught my attention. People do what they say they will do. And I think that's a noteworthy trait in any organisation. Today, you will hear about the impact of that dedication for the people and communities where we work. But first, as the CEO of a voluntary organisation, it would be remiss of me not to comment on the environment that we find ourselves working in. As 2024 gets underway, the strain on the NHS services continues to grab headlines. Social care is also under pressure. A report by the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, published last autumn, found that 470,000 people in England were waiting for care, a direct payment, or for their care to be assessed. Those pressures are compounded by uncertainty and instability, and at Involve and other organisations like ours, we're certainly starting to feel that uncertainty. A local government association survey found that 1 in 5 council leaders in England think it's very likely or fairly likely that their council will issue a Section 114 notice, which effectively declares them bankrupt in 24-25. At Involve, we are acutely aware of the challenges faced by people in accessing timely health and care. The impact of these pressures is tangible, resulting in limited preventative health care, delayed diagnosis, inconsistent management of long-term health conditions, and prolonged waits for emergency and elective care. Furthermore, deep societal inequalities, intensified by a cost of living crisis, are manifesting themselves in various health-related issues. Our teams frequently report on inappropriate housing, affordability concerns regarding food and heating, reflecting the broader challenges faced by individuals. But Involve, like many of our partners, remain optimistic. We work to see the opportunities and to be nimble enough to respond to them. In the spring, the government will publish a major conditions strategy, aiming to tackle the root cause of ill health and mortality while addressing the challenges faced by those with multiple health conditions. Amidst the ever-changing political landscape, there is consensus on the need to shift more care into the community, emphasising integrated personal care and personalised services. There's growing support for preventative health measures across the political spectrum, aligning well with Involve's strengths and expertise. Like many of my peers, I'm hopeful that an election will prompt solutions to problems that have been overlooked for too long. People, systems, and organisations cannot wait for much longer. But when I'm out meeting people, When I'm out meeting people, they don't talk to me about the challenges they face accessing services. They talk to me about the positive impact that Involve has had on their lives. Involve now works with people of all ages, and we're starting to consider what this means for the organisation in the future. And today, you're going to hear about just some of our services. Jane and Sally will update you around the work Involve delivers to carers and innovative projects aiding hospital discharge. In the year April 2022 to March 2023, Involve supported over 5,000 carers, and over 3,000 people were referred as new to a caring role. We support carers in several different ways and are looking forward to increasing those offers in the coming years. Our hospital discharge team also supports carers directly as well, but you will hear about one of the pilot projects supporting people to access assistive technology to help get them home and prevent readmission. Jane will talk to you about the data we have regarding preventing admission to A&E, and we've also shared some more information about this in our impact report. As A&E admissions increase and hospital stays extend, our work around hospital discharge and preventing admission clearly demonstrates the savings that preventative services can have for the wider system. You'll also hear from Katie and Amelia, who will share information around our work with younger people. We are actively involved in supporting young people to build skills, confidence, and increase their engagement in their communities. The impact for these younger people and their families is far-reaching and cannot be underestimated. Gary and Lizzie will then talk about our collaborations with partners like Trinity Theatre, where we are pleased to be able to meet today. Our work with partners, demonstrates our commitment to supporting and developing communities through supporting diverse organisations, offering an array of activities and places for people to meet and spend time. The qualitative and quantitative data supporting our work is robust and emphasises our dedication to evidence-based practice. You will hear about this today and read about our data published in the impact report. In the face of ongoing economic uncertainty, balancing service delivery, being exceptional employers, and fostering a volunteer-friendly environment remain priorities for Involve and our partners as we continue to look for ways to strengthen the sector and build on our collaborative working. Richard talked to you earlier about the amazing number of people that we have worked with this year. We want to do more. We want to reach more people in more communities and support more organisations. We know what we does works, and we can demonstrate that it works. We will be relentless with our focus on improving health, empowering communities to live well, and tackling the root causes of ill health. As we move forward, our services, systems and policies will be closely scrutinised. But today you will hear about our passion and commitment to continue working with communities and the people and organisations within them, to continue the excellent person-centred and innovative work that Involve is known for. In closing, I want to express my sincere gratitude to the entire team and all our volunteers at Involve for their unwavering dedication and hard work. Thank you. I will now pass you over to Jane and Sally.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm really pleased that I've actually got Sally with me today. It's a lot nicer standing up here with a friend. So I'm Jane, I'm our Director of Services, and this is Sally, who is our Hospital Projects Manager. And as Andrea said, we're going to take you through some of the work that we've done with carers over the past year. I think it's really, really important whenever we talk about carers that we actually always say what that actually means and what the Care Act definition is. And also, this is something that will undoubtedly touch all of our lives at some point. 3 in 5 of us will end up caring for someone, and that may not be through a choice. So the people that we support are people who are in an unpaid role, providing or intending to provide care, and that's generally for a family member or friend. Those caring roles can be so varied, and I think the time that I've worked with carers, which has been 13 years now, the thing that I've learned is this changes all of the time. And I think especially over the past year where we've seen carers that have been suffering such poverty and financial deprivation. So the people we support may be a mum or a dad or a friend or a neighbour. The contract that we hold is with Kent County Council, and we also have some NHS funding within that contract as well. It's an outcomes-based contract, so really we're trying to help carers achieve goals and what's important to them. One part of the contract which makes it a little bit more complicated than a lot of the other work that we do is that we actually complete the carers assessments on behalf of the local authority. So part of that role is actually statutory work. We also hold funding from the NHS as well, which is about giving carers a break. And we look to really personalise those breaks. One thing that we really are proactive about is actively seeking and identifying carers. And we all do that in very different ways. So Sally's on site at the hospital with her team, so they're very embedded in that and identify carers at those points where they may be even taking on a caring role for the first time. We're out in the community, we're talking, we hold sessions and webinars to identify carers. And as Andrea said, we actually had 3,354 new referrals between April 22 to March 2023. So a real large amount of people being referred to us or self-referring to us from our marketing. What we realised, though, is that there's still a huge amount more carers in the areas of West Kent and wider Kent that we haven't identified yet, so we're certainly not complacent. Our staff teams supported 5,546 people who are caring for someone. And this is done by various ways. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It may be that contact is just by telephone. It could be online. It could be via home visits over several times as well, but also out in community settings as well. And really interesting, what our data shows is that 70% of the carers that we support actually have their own health conditions, either long-term health conditions or a disability. So the carers that we support not only are supporting someone with a health issue generally, but they also generally have a health issue themselves. So how do we work? So what we've done at Involve is we've implemented the ESTA model throughout everything that we do, working with people. So just to explain that a bit, The Esther philosophy of care actually came from Sweden, and it was brought over to the UK in 2016. And one of the things that we've done is work with the Design and Learning Centre for Clinical and Social Innovation. And the purpose of them is to co-design solutions to challenges faced by the NHS and social care, with a focus on empowering the person to take more control of their health and well-being. And who is Esther? Esther is anybody. Esther is a fictitious person. They can be anyone with some form of complex needs. And that might be that they've got care and support needs, but it might be that they're social needs as well, which is around a lot of our work. And that Esther can be any age or gender, and their needs obviously, physical, mental or social. So what does that look like? So it's very much about us focusing on what matters to people. So shared decision making and making sure that we're always involving the person that we're working with. That personalised care and support planning, always focusing on what matters to Esther and absolutely never assuming that we know what Esther's preferences are. And what we try and encourage the staff to do is do with rather than for. Sometimes that's really difficult, and we do have to do a bit of doing for, but always with the aim of that we're doing with someone. Very importantly for carers, because they do have legal rights to a statutory assessment, making sure that we really give carers choice and that they're able to know what is out there for them and what they can access. And that includes a statutory carers assessment from us. Social prescribing. Absolutely our bread and butter. So we do lots of social prescribing with carers as well, and you'll see how some of that works as I go on. And supported self-management. What we really want is to help people, to empower them and support them to be able to look after themselves and not us taking over. So what's the vision? The vision for everyone that we work with, involved, so all of our Esthers, is that they will experience confidence and independence and be supported by a strong network. And that network may just be their own family, of course. So how do we focus on what matters to people? What we know is that everyone's caring experience is different, but there are obviously some common themes. And I think what's really important is that first contact with someone. When someone approaches us themselves, they may never have asked for any help in their caring role. They may not even be sure they're a carer. Am I? Is that me? I've seen that marketing. Does that relate to me? So I think what we do really well, and a shout out here to our telephone navigators, who I hope some are able to watch, but they might be too busy, is they take a really good approach to building trust with people in that first contact, making sure that people have time to tell their story, that they're not rushed. And actually, if people are not open to a conversation when we first call them, we don't give up. We'll ask if we can call them again, or what's a better way to communicate with them. And that might be by email at first, or it might actually be that we actually need to go out and meet them face to face. So that team will really take time around that. They're under pressure, as you can see from the large amount of referrals coming in, but they work really hard around that. I'm really proud of them. And they will make sure that they identify those carers who actually might need that statutory support. So they might need that statutory carers assessment from us. And that will go out to our community navigators, who also work in a really flexible way. They might complete that on telephone with someone, and that might be because the person works and they want that appointment after work. It might be that they actually want a home visit. As I've already said, a lot of the people that we're supporting have their own health conditions. It may be just much easier that we actually go out and speak to someone and hear their story and what they need face to face. It might be that it's in the community, or it might be online. So from that assessment, we will really focus on what's happening in that carer's life and the person that they're supporting, how they may like things to be, what might be the barriers around that, and what we can do to support and help them around that. And that might take a long time. It might take a couple of years. People who come into the carer service are always on a journey, and that journey changes over time. So that support planning may result in a variety of different offers that people can access. It may be that actually all they want to do is meet someone else that's in that caring role. They might be looking after someone with a mental health illness, feel really isolated, unable to talk to any of their friends about that. And so what they might do is want to just meet other carers. And we're able to facilitate that in different ways. I'll talk a bit more about that later. Emotional support. A lot of people are really grieving that their husband's been diagnosed with dementia. They realise that their relationship is completely changing. It's not the same now, and they're grieving for what there was before. So that's support to people, making sure that we take the time to listen and empathise and that we don't rush people. It may be actually that we're able to issue them a personal budget that helps them in their caring role. It may be something that helps them to access an activity that improves their physical health or their well-being. Or it may be something really, really practical, like a washing machine, because they haven't got one or it's broken, and the person they're looking after is incontinent and they're constantly washing sheets. So really personalised support planning to people. Also, looking at emergency planning with people. Actually, if you're not able to look after your son, your husband, your daughter, your neighbour, is there anyone else who can step in? Who have you got around you? And trying to build that strength and capacity into that person's life. It may actually be that they haven't got anybody, and that is quite a common theme of what we hear. So we'll look to help them about what support is out there for them if they're not well, or if they get rushed into hospital and then met by Sally there. Also, accesses to care packages as well, helping carers that are currently providing all personal care to the person that they support. And that might be because the person actually declines the service from social services. It has been offered, they've got an eligible need for it, but they decline it. And then that family member is left to provide that support. It might be that we can really work around that and to enable carers to have a bit of a break. So they might be providing personal care, but perhaps we could put in some support to enable them to get out so that they can still go to the gym or go to a coffee morning to meet their friends. And what we do is we don't close people to this service. They can dip in and out of it as they need it. And we'll make sure that we review them. So people will have a review. They'll be asked, have what we put in place, is that working for you? Is it not? And if it's not, we can change it. But also that phrase, sticking like glue. So when someone's having a really bad time and we know that actually they may be heading for carer breakdown, or it may be that one of them's going to end up in hospital, we don't let that go, and the staff will really keep in touch and make sure that they do everything to support that person. Moving on to peer support. So I've invited one of our staff here today called Nick, and she's very new into her role. She's only been in it a couple of days. But one of the things that we've really identified is the benefits to carers of peer support. We have various groups that we run. Some are online, some are face-to-face, and we want to really look at developing that further over the next year. Those face-to-face groups can be a place where people can talk and share their experiences, but also have that experience of someone who's walking in their shoes or walked in their shoes and maybe volunteering for us. That sharing of lived experience and empathy, I think, is really invaluable to people. I've heard people say to me, there's nothing as good as hearing how someone else coped with a difficulty that I'm currently having. The other thing that we run, and we're back running these face-to-face now after the pandemic, is our carer forums. And this is very much our remit about giving carers a voice. So not only are we there to provide assessments, support, emotional support, but we're also there to ensure that carers have a voice. And those forums are a place where we'll invite KCC, we'll invite the NHS, we'll invite Arriva buses, and we'll enable carers to have a voice at those forums. But they're also a really nice sociable event as well. And they're also a really good place to get male carers to come along. And I've realised that is because it's not about emotion. They're not coming along thinking they've got to talk about private things, but actually they can come along with a notepad and pen. They can listen to speakers, they can ask some questions. But actually, at our last forum, I do know that 2 of the men there have connected and now are in touch with each other. So they're really important ways that we try and engage with people and ensure that they have peer support and a voice. And I've got some feedback here from a carer who's been attending one of our online catch-up groups. And I think this is Michaela, our navigator, who's helped this person to express how they feel about attending this group. So I started attending an Involved Carers online catch-up group, and that was in the pandemic. It's been brilliant. It's the support of people who give different perspectives of their own caring roles. This opens up options for me, and the different perspectives are personal experiences and thoughts, which is very helpful. It is a precious hour away from my caring role and work. I try hard to ensure I keep that hour free from other appointments. I cannot leave my husband, and I work from home too. Having an online group is essential for me. This is my hour. It is important that there is an involved community navigator present too. They are the person that can step in if things become too intense or personal, offering to speak with people privately afterwards about particular things. People are encouraged to talk, but not made to talk if they prefer to listen. Dominant personalities are steered gently. I enjoy the opportunity to chat about different subjects away from my caring role, also, such as books and hobbies. I found that really humbling when I read that, and I was looking for, some of the really great feedback that we receive. But this one's really humbling because actually all we're providing here is an hour of online support to someone, but it obviously makes a real difference to them. So some of the outcomes and feedback, I'm only going to mention this very briefly because I know Lizzie's going to talk about this later, but one of the things around the ESTA model is that in Sweden it really decreased unnecessary admissions to hospital and repeat admissions. And one of the things that we found working with carers and where we adopt this approach is that actually we were able to decrease their A&E attendance by 19.8%, and decrease their unplanned inpatient stays by 4.79%. And I think that's massively powerful data of how personalised care and that approach can then achieve those results. I thought it was also interesting that just after 3 months of being in the service, 44.7% of carers feel better equipped to deal with problems. And 25% of carers have increased their physical activity. And I think that's a real testament to where the navigators are good at social prescribing and also looking at what that carer might need in place to be able to get out and take some physical activity. So they're really, really interesting data. There's just one final quote that I'd like to read. May I just take this opportunity to thank everyone at Involve Kent for the fantastic support you gave me during what was the most challenging time of my life. Those challenges were physical, logistical, emotional, and psychological. And that's from a gentleman that received support on the carers contract. I just thought it was really interesting feedback. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Sally now, but I am going to stay with her.
Thank you.
Okay, Sally's going to talk to you about our work in the hospital.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Sally. I'm the Hospital Projects Manager for Involve. And the first part of I wanted to talk to you about was the Carers Hospital Discharge Service. So we have presence in both Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells Hospital. And we base ourselves in the integrated discharge team office, but go all over the wards and kind of anywhere we're allowed. We've also got great relationships with the community hospitals as well in West Kent, who we're also in regular contact with, and help to identify carers and provide support to people being discharged from a community hospital as well. So we're quite involved, or can be involved, in discharge planning meetings or best interest meetings. This can be beneficial to both the hospital and the carers. For the hospital, I think it gives them peace of mind that they know that the carer and cared for will be followed up with once they're home to provide practical and emotional support. And then very much the same for the carer as well. I think also it can be quite a challenging time with a lot of information, so sometimes it's quite nice just to have a second ear to provide additional information once that meeting's over. Once someone is home from hospital, we're able to provide practical support for 14 days. This could be just to help with shopping, just to take that off of someone's to-do list during a busy time. It could be someone to help with the cleaning, or someone to come and stay with the cared for to allow the carer a break from their caring role, whether that mean they go out and see friends and family or just sit in a coffee shop, or if they're in quite a demanding caring role, it could mean that they go up and sit upstairs and close the bedroom door and just sit for a few hours while they've got peace of mind that someone's down there with the cared for, providing any support they might need. We're also able to provide emotional support during a difficult time. This is particularly prevalent maybe when someone comes into hospital, but before that they didn't have any prior needs. For example, if someone had a fall or experienced a stroke, the carer didn't need to be a carer before then. So I think with a lot of information being thrown their way, a whole new change of lifestyle, we can provide that support that way. There's just some statistics down there. So we identified 928 new carers from Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells hospitals during the year, and of those, 450 we brokered support to assist them in their caring role once the person was discharged. The second project that I was here to talk to you about was the hospital technology facilitation. This is a 9-month pilot that we're running, which comes to an end at the end of March. And this is for anyone living in Kent and Medway being discharged from an acute or community hospital. The purpose of the pilot is to enable a more timely discharge and to prevent readmission into hospital, particularly focusing on those unplanned readmissions into hospital where it definitely could be avoided. We also want to enable people to use technology to promote their independence and to reduce their social isolation. We're also there to promote the use of assistive technology the person may already have in their home. For example, an Alexa, and they have one, but they're maybe not using it to its full potential. And lastly, we're there to encourage clients and their carers to feel more confident with the use of technology and therefore to reduce digital exclusion. On this slide is just some of the technology we're able to prescribe from this pilot. I won't talk to you about all of them, but I will just mention a few. So the first one is we can provide a PIR motion sensor to pager. We've provided a lot of these for people being discharged from hospital, and often has been the reason someone is discharged from hospital safely. This is where the PIR motion will be set up next to a bed or a chair, and then the carer will carry around the pager and will be alerted of any movement if someone did need support getting in and out of bed or up from their chair, therefore hopefully preventing falls. I also want to talk about the Memorabell clock, which is that one at the bottom in the middle. This clock, I'm sure many of you have seen it, it tells the time, the day, whether it's morning, afternoon or night. But you can also set reminders on there. So this can promote independence for a cared for to hopefully promote the independence for medication or to encourage someone to eat or drink. On this as well, you can also record your voice, a loved one's voice, which can be a bit more encouraging than Alexa's voice. And then the last one I wanted to talk about was the Amazon Echo Show, which is the Echo with the screen. This can be really useful for carers. You can drop in and out. So say a carer did go out and wanted to just double check that the cared for was okay at home. With their phone, they can drop into the room just to double check that the person's okay at home on their own. And therefore promotes the independence of the cared for and allows them a break from their caring role. Just on the screen now is a little bit of feedback that we've received for our hospital projects. I won't read them all, but I will just read that one at the bottom because I think it really summarises what we're trying to do. So it says, without all the knowledge or advice, it would have been a struggle. I wouldn't have known what choices or support was available. As I wouldn't have known what to do, I would have probably gone down the immediate route of looking at nursing homes, which would have been totally unnecessary. The fact that R can continue to be at home is significant. And I think that just summarises really what we're trying to do, is to keep people at home and as independent for as long as possible. Thank you. We'll just pass
We're just passing over to you, Katie and Amelia now. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Katie Abson, I'm the Head of Children's Services at Involve, and I'm very pleased also to have a colleague up here with me, and this is Amelia, who's the Children's Projects Manager. So today, Amelia and I will be sharing the development of Involve's Children's Services, and particularly including an overview of our innovative Connect service. So I'll be giving a brief background as to how we came about providing this Kent County Council short break service, and Amelia will detail how the programme has developed and grown and tell us about all the wonderful opportunities that it's created for children and young people in Maidstone, Tunbridge and Malling, particularly during 22-23. So just to go back a little bit, to give a bit of the history and context, in 2020, Involve launched its first ever service for children and young people. Children's health and wellbeing navigators were placed in GP practices throughout the county to provide personalised care and support and navigation to children and families where the child had some long-term health condition. And by the end of March 2023, we had 18 wonderful children's navigators placed in over 60 GP practices, and they'd supported over 3,000 families. So what was new about the Children's Health and Wellbeing Navigation Service? The navigators were able to respond directly from primary care into the highest areas of needs, which was and continues to be children and young people on the neurodiversity and mental health pathways, where families we found were experiencing long waiting lists and a lack of provision and limited support. Being able to identify families prior to diagnosis and offering early intervention with a personalised approach meant that the children's navigators gathered a unique insight into the experience of children, young people and their families for the duration of their journey. And our data collection very quickly started to identify gaps, themes and trends across Kent's children's services. We became really confident that we understood what matters most to children and families in Kent and relished any opportunity to feed back into the wider system and to meet need by expanding our own services. So as the service developed, we were increasingly well received by stakeholders across Kent's children's services, and we were invited into some emerging work streams, giving us the opportunity to engage with exciting and innovative pieces of work. And I've detailed some of them here. But most significantly to today's presentation, we successfully bid for a Kent County Council Young People's Autistic Spectrum Condition Innovation Grant in April 2021, and Connect was born. So for 1 year, we tested this innovative model, which put young people at the very centre of developing a provision that honoured their difference and responded directly to their wishes and views. Connect closely aligned with Involve's vision, mission and values, and was soon to become a place where neurodiverse young people could be themselves, thrive, socialise and have fun in a safe and supportive environment. So the service was extremely popular, and at the beginning of 2022, we had strong evidence of an effective model that achieved great outcomes, and so we successfully bid for a 1-year Kent County Council contract to provide the Connect model as a short break for children with disabilities in Maidstone, Tunbridge and Malling. And this is where I'll pass over to Amelia, who will tell you about how the service developed during that first year.
Lovely. You're going to have to tell me which button I need to
There you
press.
go. So
That
just
one.
that one.
Right. Rather than going wrong. So, yeah, I started in July 2022, and I think Connect had a little hiatus, so we got Connect back up and running, and we started by speaking with parents and carers at the beginning via Zoom meetings and also over the phone. And I went out and met 17 families at home before we did any activities to find out what they wanted from a programme and get to know the young people and their interests. So it was really important at this time to find out what would make Connect autism friendly. So this could be anything to having music on, lighting low, smaller group numbers and having fidgets available. Because for a lot of these young people, groups like Scouts or other programmes just didn't work for them. So we promoted the programme to schools in Maidstone, Tunbridge and Malling, as well as sharing with other local organisations and Facebook groups for parents with autism. And by the end of March 2023, we had received 174 Connect referrals, And referrals came from the Involved Children's Health and Wellbeing Navigators, Kent County Council's Early Help and Social Services, schools, and directly from parents themselves. We created a monthly Connect bulletin that goes out to all the people who have referred to Connect and the professional network, including schools. And you can see some wonderful quotes on the November 22 bulletin, including one there that says, I made new friends and I got active in a friendly environment, which was just really sweet. And I always struggle to choose which photos for these bulletins because there's always too many nice ones. And now I'm losing all my notes. Bear with me. Oh, I think my slides are in a weird order. Anyway, sorry, technical issues. So from September to March, we held 36 activities and 77 children came along, filling a total of 325 activity spaces. For 52 of these 77 children, we'd first met at home during a home visit, which really helped them to build the confidence to come along and understand that they could, what they would be coming along to beforehand, and just settle those nerves. I'm dropping everything, so that's fun. Sorry, Katie. So yeah, we had some really lovely feedback from parents. So yeah, you can see from the quotes on screen that they've told us that Connect is a vital part of their family needs and gives them a little respite. And their children love being treated like everybody else. And joining in with other like-minded children makes her feel safe. Sorry, there's quite a lot to read, so I'll pause for a moment. And some more. So we appreciate the break. And I enjoy that the children can go to groups and events that they wouldn't normally be able to go to. And I love this one. Connect has opened up his world socially. Right. Struggling with my paperwork. And then we had some really lovely quotes from young people as well. So I love that it's nice to have a group of people that understand me. And we get to meet new people in a place or activity that we can feel safe in. And I think that's really, really important, that if the world's felt really unsafe for a long time, that there's somewhere where they can go meet other people that feel just like them. So there are too many fantastic quotes and photos to choose from, but we have had a lovely piece of art done here by a young person to represent how it feels to be autistic. And we're now going to share a video that we made with Connect to mark the Neurodiversity Celebration Week 2023. Is it going to work first time? I don't think we've got our case study. Oh no, it's next. Oh, our slides have all jumbled up, but I'll go forward to the case study and then I'll go back. So this is a case study of a young person who was referred to Connect from an early help worker. And when I first met her, she told me she didn't have any friends at school and was regularly refusing to go to school. She'd been told that she couldn't go on her Year 6 residential trip unless she improved her attendance, and I knew that meant a lot to her at the time. So she came along the next day after I met her to an online session where we played the game Among Us. I don't know if any of you have played that. It's good fun. At the first session, she didn't really speak. She spoke maybe once, but kept her camera off. And then the next week she joined the call again and kept her camera on and spoke with other children on the call. And then I was giving her a lift to activities because Mum didn't drive, and she helped me set up and clean up afterwards. And it was really nice, actually, because she was able to speak to me on the car journey there and back. And I spoke to Mum the next day and kind of said, how did she get on? It was her first face-to-face activity. And Mum said, you know, she really enjoyed it. And she said, everyone there was like me, so I could be myself. And she also said to me that actually she'd gone to bed straight away when she got home and then went to school in the morning and then again the next day, which was very, very different to how things had been. So I know she's made lots of friends at Connect activities, and they keep in touch on social media, and I've even seen them making TikToks together, which is very sweet, and I'm also kind of embarrassed when I see them doing the silly dances. They do sometimes. They have once tried to get me involved, but I won't be offended that isn't a regular occurrence. So, yeah, and at half-term activities as well, they were able to play Among Us on their phones, that game, at lunchtime, so that was really sweet. And after one of these half-term activities, I gave her a lift there and back, and she told me she's getting bullied at school, but days like today are good because she could be herself, which was really sweet. And then the next week, we were due to have an Among Us online session, and Mum said, oh no, she can't come because she's due to go to her residential trip this week at school. And I knew that meant so much to her because she told me in the car how much it meant to her to go on this residential and be part of the group at school and finish her primary school journey really well. So, yeah. So, moving forwards, I can't remember, this is you, Katie, I think. Oh, there, oh gosh. Sorry, technology, notes, pages, all going everywhere.
Lovely. So thanks, Amelia. It has been a really exciting journey setting up Connect. And we realised very quickly that the model that we had for Connect could work for other young people as well who were perhaps feeling excluded and isolated. And so we went on to use that model to apply for some funding to start a Links programme. Which is for children and young people aged 15 to 19 who have or are experiencing mental health issues. And again, it was quite an innovation. We weren't sure how successful that was going to be with a very different cohort of young people, but actually it's going from strength to strength. So I'm hoping that at some time in the coming year, we'll have a chance to report back to you how that's been going. We have also applied this year for a 2-year contract for the Kent County Council short break service to continue Connect. So we're keeping our fingers very much crossed for that and hoping that the outcomes that we've been able to show from the last couple of years have been acknowledged and that we'll be able to continue with that work. So we've been able to take on youth programme coordinators now. So Amelia is now managing that side of our service, and we're hopeful for the future that we can continue to make a difference in these children's lives. So thank you for your time.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Gary Wells. I'm here with Lizzie and Abby to talk about our partnership work at Involve. But I thought I'd start by talking about why we work in partnership. And I've been really moved sitting here hearing the stories from Jane and Sally and Katie and Amelia about the work we've done with carers and young people. And I realised that the most impactful thing we do at Involve is connecting people to their communities, to their tribe, whether that's groups of carers coming together or groups of people with neurodiversity coming together to form communities. The impact of that on people's health, on their well-being and their use of the system is huge. We know that lots of people and communities are formed around interest groups. People come together because they care about nature and conservation, or chess, or dancing, or theatre, or singing. Actually, talking about singing on the stage of a theatre actually gives me a bit of a cold sweat. Lots of different activities people come together around. And we know at Involve we can't possibly facilitate, manage and put on groups for all these diverse interests that people have got. We're committed to working with people in a personalised way and connecting them to the communities that they're connected to. And we can only do that with a really diverse range of activities running in our local community. We also know that working with partners massively increases our reach. We're mature enough as an organisation to realise not everyone will knock on Involve's door when they need support. Some people will come along to a group here at Trinity Theatre. Some people will call Chatty Cafe. Some people will go along to a pétanque group. And by having a really dynamic referral process across our partnership and back into Involve when it's needed, we're able to support a much wider range of people than we'd be able to if it was just us. We also know there are lots of organisations out there who operate specialisms, people who are specialists in mental health, in bereavement, in very specialist benefits advice. And by working in partnership, we can open up that specialism and support that specialism. We've mapped all of the voluntary sector organisations across West Kent or across Kent, and we know that there are massive gaps in provision. The last thing we want to do is to go in with resource and duplicate activities that are already run by brilliant partners in the organisation. We also are aware of our market guardianship responsibilities. The voluntary sector in Kent equates to about £600 million. And 80% of that, 80% of the activity and 80% of the finances are done by micro and small voluntary sector organisations. Voluntary sector organisations with an annual turnover of less than £100,000. So we know that our support can really help all of these very micro and small organisations and bring them all together. We also know, as Andrea said in her presentation earlier, that we're moving into very difficult times. We're looking at cuts, other voluntary sector organisations are looking at cuts, but also the local authority have been cut. The health systems are being cut. And those cuts have affected both the local authorities, but also their commissioning teams, which means that when they're looking to commission in the future, it's much easier for them to issue large contracts to larger providers. And we've seen a trend recently of contracts going outside of Kent to large national providers and sometimes to corporate providers funded by venture capitalists. We know that we can bring that £600 million worth of voluntary sector together to form a super organisation that can then stand up and compete with these organisations for bids in this new world. And we want to say to all funders and commissioners today, a contract for Involve or a commission for Involve is a commission for a vibrant voluntary sector, a supported voluntary sector, a diverse voluntary sector, and a resourced voluntary sector. So we want to develop that new funding model. Last year, we made we had an income of 507, or we didn't, we had an income of £5.2 million, and out of that, £570,000 or £507,000 we gave away in grants on contracts to other voluntary sector organisations. That's almost 10p in every pound that came into Involve went back into that local vibrant voluntary sector. I'm going to hand over to Lizzie now, who's going to talk more practically about how we work and support our local voluntary sector.
Thanks, Gary. So we've talked about why we work in partnership, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about just two of the ways that in which we do that. So there are more than what I'm going to talk about today, but today I'm particularly going to be looking at how we work with our actively involved partners across the North and West Kent. And then I'm also going to be talking about the West Kent Health and Care Voluntary Sector Alliance. So back towards the end of 2020, we were awarded the Universal Wellbeing in the Community contract from KCC, which our kind of working name for is Actively Involved. This is a contract that it aims to support people who are over 55 to connect to support and opportunities in the community. Now, as Gary has said, we know that we can't provide absolutely everything that those people need. So a really important part of this work was using a partnership model to ensure that we had a really good network of delivery partners who could work alongside our wellbeing support coordinators and community activity coordinators. So we set out to kind of put together a really broad network of people. And in that first year of delivering Actively Involved, we had 28 different partners in West Kent. We have now grown that, and in the third year of the contract, we were working with 37 different partners. And they were contracted to deliver a whole range of different things, so arts and cultural activities, social groups, exercise and movement groups, nature-based interventions, mental health support, information and advice, and also more intensive one-to-one support such as befriending. This slide, I'm not going to go through absolutely everything that everyone delivers, but it's just a really great visual of just how many people we are working with and the real breadth of organisations that we're able to support. So not just larger organisations such as the Citizens Advices, but really small community groups as well that maybe wouldn't necessarily be anywhere close to receiving contracted funding from KCC. So just to pick out a couple of these, a really local one, we've got the Amelia Scott, which some of you may have walked past this morning, and they do a group around museum curation, exhibition curation. We've got Chatty Cafe, who I'll be passing over to shortly. We've got some transport partners that are really vital to help people get to these activities. We've got quite niche things like Cast a Thought, who do a fishing group for wellbeing. So a real kind of tapestry of different support that people can access in the community. So after our first successful year of delivering this in the West, we were then successful in being awarded the contract in the North. So we went down a very similar route using our successful partnership model from the West. This was a slightly newer area for us to be working in, so there was a piece of work around kind of mapping that area, building relationships with people across Dartford, Gravesham and Swanley, identifying who would be a good partner, and what kind of provision we might need. We were also acutely aware that the demographic is significantly different in the north of Kent, and we wanted to make sure that we were offering some sort of culturally appropriate activities and things that would appeal to a more diverse range of people. So in that first year of delivery in the north, we subcontracted 22 partners. And in that first year, we were able to support an additional 1,500 people, just over, through 38 different activities or services in that part of Kent. And just reflecting back on what Gary said about that kind of reach, those are people that we might not necessarily have supported because they may have gone directly to those partners. They wouldn't necessarily have come to us. So again, a real kind of illustration of the range of support that we have there. So we worked with Kent Equality Cohesion Council. That was really important for us to make sure that we were able to speak to people in different communities, and we sought advice from them as well, and have really kind of nurtured relationships. We've also been working with the Gurdwara, and we also have an Asian yoga group, which is in Gravesend. And again, some sort of quite quirky activities or things that maybe we wouldn't usually deliver ourselves, things like Patonk, and I believe our Patonk partner is here today. And we also have other things around advice. So one of the really great things about how we work is that we can be quite flexible and react to change and trends in what's happening, day to day. So as soon as we were aware, towards the beginning of the cost of living crisis, we decided to start working with Groundwork as a partner, and their green doctors can work with people one-to-one around how to reduce their energy bills, and really kind of focus on those things that are very much current issues. So I'm going to hand over briefly to Abby from Chatty Cafe, and then I'm going to come back on.
Across just here.
I don't know, that's your only slide, I think.
I've got 4.
Have you got it?
So hi everyone, I'm Abby Murray, the Operations Manager from the Chatty Cafe scheme, and thank you so much for inviting me and giving me the chance to speak today. So I'll just go back to the first slide. So it looks like my slides have got a bit mixed up as well. So I'm just going to firstly explain and introduce our services, and then I'm going to touch on a couple of case studies with some clients that we've worked with across West Kent and the DGS area, and then towards the end I'll talk about some of the benefits from our partnership with Involve Kent, and some great outcomes from that work. So the Chatty Cafe scheme, so we started in 2017, and our aim is to deliver services which seek to reduce social isolation and loneliness. So we run 3 services. The first one is where we encourage venues, so it could be a cafe, a pub, a community centre, and we encourage them to designate a table as what we call a chatter and natter table. And then we have a volunteer programme where we train local people to give their time, it could be an hour a week, to sit at the chatter and natter table and host it, so that they're a welcoming, friendly face to anyone who wants to get together and chat. And we also run a telephone befriending service, and we run chatty cafes on Zoom, which are aiming to kind of replicate being sat around a table, having a cup of tea and having a chat. And they're great for anyone who, for whatever reason, might be struggling to leave the house, but could still benefit from that conversation and interaction. So I'm just going to look at, I have a case study from our telephone befriending service. So we have a wonderful large group of volunteers that are fully trained to ring a client every week to chat on the phone. Our volunteers are matched with a client to call, as I said, weekly for 12 weeks. And I've just put on this slide some of the feedback that we've captured from clients receiving a weekly call. I won't sort of go through them all, but as you can see through here, we really do see that just simply giving someone the opportunity to have a chat every week, even if it's just about, oh gosh, wasn't the weather terrible last night? Or did you see that thing on TV the other day? For someone who maybe lives alone and maybe doesn't, have a strong social network, we know this service just can be, so good. So the next case study I just wanted to touch on was actually in a cafe quite close to here, the Kitchen Table in Tunbridge Wells. They joined the Chatty Cafe scheme back in 2022, and a lovely gentleman called Christian came forward and offered his time to volunteer to host their chatter and natter table. So Christian started hosting the table in August 2022. He goes in twice a week now, so he hosts it on a Tuesday and a Wednesday during a lunchtime slot. And actually, his is a really nice story because Christian took some time off work recovering from an illness, but actually through this volunteering role, it's really opened his eyes to the mental health sector, and he's now actually retraining to be a support worker in mental health. And I spoke to him yesterday to get some feedback, and he just said it's been so lovely, just all the different people he's met that actually kind of live within his local area that he'd never crossed paths with before. And there's just a short quote here from Rosemary, who's the manager at the table, that just said that they do know a lot of their customers do live alone and actually now coming, you know, just to speak to Christian and to have that interaction every week. So just in terms of our partnership work, and just to finish off here, one of the real strengths from this, the work with Involve Kent, is especially around our telephone befriending service, that we have this real kind of open dialogue. So when a client's referred to us and matched with one of our volunteers for a weekly call, what's been fantastic is where if a situation was to arise where a client maybe said something that raises concerns to the volunteer, that we can absolutely feed that back to Involve's social prescriber or community connector, and then work with them to, if needed, get that client some more support and help. So we do have that back and forth, which works really, really well. And also, through us delivering this service, we run surveys and we gather feedback from all the beneficiaries, from the people receiving the calls. So we can really we've started to, identify what's working really well, maybe some areas that we need to change and make improvements. But also, in terms of this last bullet point, capacity building, another partner of Involve Kent's is CAP Enterprise, and we've actually worked with them where they've held workshops with some of our staff and our board members to help us prepare a 3-year strategic development plan, which has really helped us improve our governance and give us a framework in terms of how we can expand our services and help more people. So I think that's it for me. Is that okay? It's quite short, but yeah, I'll pass back to Lizzie now. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. And I think it's worth mentioning that although I've spoken a lot about how our partners help us to reach more people, we do like to see it as a two-way working relationship, and that our partners do also receive a lot of support from us. So Sam, who's here today and who a lot of you will know, works really intensively with our partners, and we've been able to provide training around how to collect really impactful data. So it's not just a case of reporting that to us, but that can then be used by organisations in their own funding bids. And like Abby said, we work with CAP Enterprise, who can provide support, particularly around sort of sustainability and planning. And then there is that kind of two-way referring. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is what I'm just going to refer to as the Health Alliance, because it does have quite a long title. And Jane mentioned earlier around the voice of carers. And I think Involve is often thinking about those voices that we don't necessarily hear. And the Alliance is really something that brings together the voice of our sector. So we are the lead partner of the West Kent Health and Care Voluntary Sector Alliance. And this is really a forum that brings together organisations from the sector, no matter what the size. So it could be a small community group, it could be a much larger organisation. And what we're aiming to do is to work in a way that is across systems. So when we say that, that means working closer with health, it means working closer with social services, social care, and those sort of larger bodies. Because I think we often get so caught up in the sort of voluntary sector world and looking at funding and chasing the next grant, and at the moment that is a really big priority. But there is a bigger picture, and NHS England have specifically asked that healthcare sort of systems do work with the voluntary sector. So we see this alliance as almost a vehicle to help bring together the sector in West Kent so that you can have your voice and we can act as a link between West Kent HCP, which is the healthcare partnership. So we've been running this since earlier this year, and we've had a number of online meetings, some of you which may have attended, and we talk about things that are really relevant to the sector, or that provide information or new knowledge, or just help raise awareness of things that people might not necessarily know about. So we started off by looking at the integrated care system consultation, which was probably quite new to a lot of people, and that really highlighted the way that the voluntary sector fits in with health. We've later looked at things like how to evaluate and measure impact, and had another organisation come along and talk about Caveat, which is a free toolkit which is accessible to the sector. We've also talked about ways to innovate and other opportunities. And that sounds like quite a lot of talk, and I really didn't want this forum to be another forum where all we do is talk. So there has been some actual action from this alliance as well. We had an in-person workshop which brought together colleagues from the voluntary sector, but also from health and local authority as well. And we talked about the real strengths of the sector. We talked about what opportunities there are for others to work with us and what we can provide. We also talked about the barriers and challenges to really kind of address what is stopping us from working in this kind of cross-system way, and how can we come together. So that workshop led to a paper that Gary and I worked on, which was around addressing these barriers. And with that voice of the sector, we were able to come up with recommendations for others to sort of understand what are the barriers we face, but also we're not just going to say, here's the problem, we're also going to provide some potential solutions as well. So we put forward a number of recommendations to West Kent HCP, and they accepted these and are very much aware of the issues that we're facing. And one of them that I wanted to look at specifically was our recommendation number 4. One of the things we talked about quite intensively at the workshop was around access to data. Now, at Involve, we know that data is really, really important for measuring impact, but we don't always have the access to things like health data. And this is a real challenge for us, because without that, we can't show the impacts that we're having on the wider system. And equally, we talked about the kind of data that the voluntary sector has, so that real kind of local level knowledge about what's going on, particularly qualitative data, so things that we've seen today, the case studies, the quotes. We have so much of that, so how can that be used by others? So our recommendation was that we really need to be able to have access to more data, and it's been mentioned already today, but Involve has done a piece of work using health data that we were able to access. And this is the largest piece of social prescribing evidence in the country at the moment. We were able to run data about our clients through health systems, and I'm afraid I don't have any better sort of terminology around that because it's all a bit complex. But basically, we could have a look at we could track our clients' A&E attendances and also unplanned secondary care stays. And this is really important because it shows you, and you can see here, that the people accessing our services have then used health less. And that is so important to show the value of what we're doing. So you can see here that there's an almost 20% drop in A&E attendances for carers that we're working with. And that is so valuable. So we really want to be able to work closer with health, and then through the Alliance bring other voluntary sector organisations closer to be able to have that access and to really show what we're doing. So going forwards, I'm really hoping that more opportunities come out of this alliance, and I'm absolutely happy to kind of discuss joining that with anybody that's here or via email afterwards. But I'm going to leave this example up on the screen and hand back over to Gary now.
So hopefully you'll be pleased to know that I'm here to announce the break, or as we're in a theatre, it should be the intermission, I think. So I'd like to very much thank our partners here at Trinity Theatre, and especially Jason Lowry for being amazing hosts for us today. For those watching online, you'll get a holding slide on your screen for the next kind of 15 minutes. We come back at 11:55, and the live stream will continue to go live then at 11:55. For those of you in the room, if you're staying for the formal part of the AGM, that's amazing, and we'd welcome that you stay for that part. But if you do have to leave, we'd ask that you pick up all your bags and coats from the auditorium and take them with you so that we don't disturb the formal AGM part of our meeting today. I'd also like to thank, and I can just about see it through the lights in my eyes, all of the partners who have come along and attended our AGM today. It's a continued pleasure to work with you, and we continually learn from you and hope that you learn from us as well. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for everybody online for listening, and we'll be back with you at 11:55. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks very much. So welcome back everyone in the room and to those who are online who joined us this morning. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, particularly our trustee colleagues, thank you so much for dialing in. If at any point you can't hear me and I stop and go quiet, can one of you just wave and do something? We can see you on a very big screen in the room, but at least I know that you can't hear me and we can pause. So welcome back to the 48th Annual General Meeting of Involve Kent on the 18th of January 2024. This is the formal element of the proceedings that we now need to follow. Just would extend my thanks again to the staff and those that have supported us here at the Trinity Theatre. It's a lovely venue which we are very lucky to have been lent the use of today. So thanks to the staff and those who've looked after us in the break. So welcome to all members. This section is predominantly for the small number of trustees who are eligible to vote and make decisions on the papers as part of our annual general meeting process. We will present relevant areas and identify who can vote for what at the various elements. You are all here as an audience and online. I know we have members that have continued to dial in to watch the formalities. You don't have a voting role in the process, but you can at any point ask any questions that you wish. So if you're in the room and you have a question for myself or any of the trustees who are here today, you just need to signal to me and I will try and manage that if I can see you beyond the lights that are very bright. So the opening remarks from me as the chair of the board. We have some areas to note at item 2 of the agenda. Some of this I have covered in the earlier presentation, but for completeness I will cover again. The first is the resignation of trustees. That was Stephen O'Connell, who was a trustee with Involve since October 2023. Stephen retired in 2023. Sorry, he was a trustee from 2013 and retired in 2023. He was our chair, and we thank Stephen for his work and his dedication to Involve. In the same period, we were pleased to have our new Vice Chair, Rachel Hewitt, who is online today. Rachel, I know you were voted at an extraordinary meeting, but you were appointed in the period to be noted. And we had the resignation of our Chief Executive Officer and the appointment of Andrew Wiggins as our new Chief Executive Officer, to which you are most welcome, and thank you for your presentation today. So that concludes the formalities of the opening. It now gives me the job of presenting the annual report formally, which I do have a copy of, and hopefully those online, you can see that. That was sent out with the papers of the meeting. I touched on this in my presentation, but I would invite every one of you to take the opportunity to look at some of the great work that's outlined in the annual general report. Highlighted this morning in my earlier presentation and others that have spoken, the fantastic work, particularly around social prescribing and the fact that Involve is now is the largest provider of social prescribing in the United Kingdom, and the brilliant work that was described by Lizzie and team in relation to how we're using the evidence-based data to now make informed decisions and pave the way for future opportunities. Staggeringly, 25,000 people are supported with personalised care, and I think the message we've had from all of the presentations this morning, and I hope you will all agree, it's personalised care with what matters for the individual, and everything that's done with Involve, from Involve and with our partners of Involve is putting the individual at the heart of the care they receive and ensuring the support they get is tailored. And having spent time firsthand with staff and volunteers that deliver some of these services, I'm always hugely humbled by the care, the dedication. Only a few weeks ago, I was in the telephone team at Turkey Mill and listening to the staff listening to the individual's needs, hearing what they need and trying to signpost them to give them the best support is one of the most humbling feelings that you can have, and that extends across all of the services. So we should take a moment to reflect on that true life personal care that's given by Involve. The mobilisation of the actively involved across Dartford, Gravesham and Swanley, we've talked about that and seen in evidence the breadth of the support that's provided, and one in which we'll continue as a model, and it's outlined in the report, the great successes. And more importantly, the case studies we've seen from all of the services today are what matters to us all, and that matter to the board, to the staff, to the leadership team, to make sure everything that is done can be put into relative context. And some of the most powerful statements come from those who tell us about their journey and their stories. Brilliantly, the £500,000 secured by for other organisations that's been described in the presentations, and long may that continue. The power of working together, I think, is critical, as is outlined, for us all to survive collectively, and that we will continue to move forward. So the annual report sets out a hugely impressive position. We've touched on much of the information from it today, but I do need to ask the trustees who are able to vote today to accept the report. And if I can ask, Duncan, that you propose it as you're in the room and we can see you, and then I need a seconder online to accept the annual report. So just to confirm, I'm asking the trustees to accept the report. Duncan, are you happy to propose that? Thank you. And can I take a seconder from online just by raising your hand, because we cannot actually hear you? And we'll take Rachel Hewitt as our seconder. Thank you very much. Equally, ahead of this meeting, we circulated the minutes of the 47th Annual General Meeting, which was held on the 8th of December 2023. For those of you that were there, it doesn't feel that long ago, but it genuinely was a year ago. The minutes have been circulated before. I've checked them personally, but I again would ask if, Duncan, you're happy to propose them for adoption. Thank you. And a seconder online, if I can. Someone who was there. Thank you. Andy, that's great. Thanks very much. So now I'm going to hand over to Duncan, who is our Treasurer, for the presentation and approval of the annual accounts for year ending 31st of March 2023. I'm going to swap at this point.
Good afternoon, everybody. For the benefit of those in the room, the trustees have all been emailed a copy of the annual accounts, which have now been submitted to Companies House as a complete and final record of the year. I don't want to go through every page of a very long and accountant-produced document, but I will highlight the headlines. I do this every year. We took income of £5.2 million in the year to the end of March 2023, which is great. And the good news is we only spent 4.7 million of that. Clearly, we don't want to be spending more than we're taking in. So we have contributed to our reserves. And I bring that point up specifically because with the challenges we've heard about with wider political and economic uncertainty, our future funding flows more than ever are in doubt. So we have to plan and have planned as a board and as a senior leadership team for potential cuts. And that will impact end users, but we have to pre-plan on how that will impact our finances. So with a budget of £5.2 million, 90% of that comes from contract income. So that's out of our control a lot of the time. And 74% of our expenditure is salary related. So if we have to cut services, the first thing that will be impacted after the end user is our staff. So we have spent a lot of time looking at and considering how that might impact on us. I don't propose to go through the detail of the accounting anymore. It's gone through a full audit process. They have been circulated and, as I say, submitted to Companies House for registration. So at this point, I do need a formal proposal from one of the trustees to accept the audited accounts as a correct record of our finances to the end of the year, or the year ended 31st of March 23. If I could ask Richard, as the trustee in the room, and another trustee online to second that motion. Thank you, Rachel, and also the other Rachel. So the accounts are therefore approved and adopted. The second proposal I have to make is in relation to the association's auditors. As part of our regular review process, we did go out to tender again this year for audit and have made, through a rigorous process, a decision to change auditors to Burgess Hodgson LLP. So again, I would like to formally propose that Burgess Hodgson LLP take over as our auditors from the current financial year. I need a proposer for that, and I'll ask Richard if he wouldn't mind. And another trustee online to second that motion. Thank you, Andy. I think you were just by a margin the first with your hand up there. So that concludes my part of the proceedings, and I'll hand back to Richard.
And for the observant of you, we didn't coordinate ties today, but we ended up wearing the same colour tie, which isn't green, it's red. So next year we need to do better. So apologies for those of you that took the green theme in the way it was intended. So thank you. So now the next element is the election of board directors by ordinary resolution. I do need to read a statement out now to comply with the relevant articles here, which I will read as is written. So in accordance with Article 35, the Board recommends the reappointing of the following board directors retiring under the rotation provisions of Article 32 and who offer themselves for reappointment for a further 3-year term. The first one is myself, Richard Lester, and the second is Rachel Hewitt. I need to ask all board members who are in favour of these re-elections to raise their hands now, please. Thank you. So just in clarity, I've got Andy, Tina, Rachel and Duncan. Thank you. Anyone against to raise their hand? Thank you. And I need not to count and summarise because we've captured that. So thank you for that. And the next is to elect board directors by ordinary resolution. In accordance with Article 35, the board recommends the appointment of the following board directors for a 3-year term. Jeremy Benson, Jonathan Then and Shelley Batt. All of those in favour of the election, please raise your hands now. And just for clarification, that's all members here in the room and online. Anyone against? Which there shouldn't be, so there isn't anyone left. And the count and summary is a total of 6. So that concludes the formal business. I'm just going to check with our Chief Exec we've done what we need to do and you've got the relevant information. Thank you, and that will be noted. So to the new members who are here today, who are sitting in the second row in the middle, welcome to the board formally. We're hugely grateful for your skill, experience and the 3-year term that will come and all that you'll bring to the board. So thanks for coming today and for your pre-work you've done to get to this point. So that concludes the formalities of the annual general meeting. There is an opportunity now if anyone has any questions in the room and or online. If you can ask them, we will seek to answer them. Nope, okay, I can see nothing. Thank you very much. So I think that concludes the formal business of the AGM. A huge thank you to everyone who's participated today, made it happen. For those online that have dialed in from near and afar, we're very grateful. And we look forward to seeing you next year at the annual general meeting 49. So thanks very much, everyone, and have a safe journey home.